All right. These two teams I thought did a good job of getting better this offseason, but I thought one team did a little bit better. So I'm going to go with the New York Giants at number two. I thought they did better at getting better at skill positions. They did the most important thing, which was bring back Leonard Williams. They added another cornerback to this group that I think is very good too. There's just two things that I don't trust about this team still, and that's quarterback and offensive line. And it could be better with skill position guys that they've added and with Saquon Barkley getting healthy, but I just don't trust those two units at all. And especially quarterback. I can't pick a team to win a division that I have zero faith in that quarterback, and I don't see it getting any better. I feel like that they're wasting this team's potential with Daniel Jones at quarterback. I know you want to see the asset and how it gets better, but I just don't see it with this team and with this player. So I got the Giants at number two because I think they have a very good roster. I just don't know if Daniel Jones is the answer.
Yeah, and I've been critical of teams that kind of go all in with only one option at quarterback when that quarterback option is kind of a bit of a question mark. And I think it's fair to criticize the Giants of putting a bit too much faith in Daniel Jones. I actually do have him as tier 4 because I had Tua as 28 and Daniel Jones at 27. I thought about flipping to 2. I stuck with Daniel Jones. I'm going to give him tier 4. We'll see if he lives up to that. He has shown flashes, and there were moments when he looked like a legit starting quarterback. He just had way too many issues, and I don't know if I'm, again, if you have to gun to my head, you have to say next year Daniel Jones is going to play good or bad. I'm saying bad. You do have Joe Judge as well, who was 20th in the coaching rankings. So, right around 500 there for those two guys.
Yeah. I mean, so I like Joe Judge. I liked what I saw at year one. I think there are some things he needs to work on, but it was his first year as a head coach. And he just seemed to get these guys to really want to play and play competitively, which is I just think is the big thing and kind of what we saw out of Flores too. But I mean, everything you said about Daniel Jones is right. There's been flashes. There's been moments that he looks awesome. His mobility is terrific. I just, I don't trust quarterbacks who turn the ball over. And this is, exhibit A of turning the ball over. Yep. I mean, you're a Buccaneers fan. You saw it firsthand. What was the difference between Jameis Winston and Tom Brady? Jameis Winston had all the physical tools you wanted at a quarterback, but if you're going to turn the ball over 40 times in a season, it's not going to work. Daniel Jones hasn't been that bad, but he turns the ball over a lot. So I just don't trust that situation. And even if I had a below average quarterback who just didn't turn the ball over, like a Teddy Bridgewater, I'd feel a lot better about this team than this situation now.
I think I'd still rather have Daniel Jones than Teddy Bridgewater. I think that there's at least some highs with Jones.
I mean, the thing is though, is that they have so much talent on the skill guys that it's like, do you need the highs at this guy when it comes to, he's putting the ball on the 30-yard line for the other team at the same time?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out a little bit. I'm not sure if it's on your end or my end, but I got most of that. We'll move on to halfbacks. Halfbacks is an interesting one because you have, Devontae Booker, fine, solid too. But Saquon Barkley is the key he's the thing that's interesting to me because I have him as tier 2, and it's worth mentioning tier 1 and tier 2 in running back is a huge deal. It's not like tier 2 is like if you have a top 5 running back, that just completely makes the opposing defense have to change how they play against you. Whereas a tier 2, you don't really have to do that. And I kind of have Barkley in tier 2 just because of the injuries. So if he can go back to form, well, I believe that's like a 2-win jump right there, which would put them, that would put him in a playoff spot. Whereas right now I don't have him in a playoff spot. So Barkley could be the key to all of this a little bit, but can he stay healthy?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing. And I hope he can stay healthy because he's so fun to watch when he's on the field. And, it could easily be that he's a tier 1 running back by the end of the season because he's that electric. He's just got to stay on the field. And I think he's going to. It seemed like kind of an anomaly, the injury last season. I think he'll be fine. And I'm hoping to watch him all 16 games this year.
Yeah, I mean, we can see, I hope so. Also for the wide receiving course that I got some guys I like a lot. Obviously I've talked plenty about Kadarius Toney and how much I love that draft pick. I think he's going to be great. I hope I don't jinx him because that's what happened a little bit last year with a couple guys. But you got Kenny Golladay, who is really good. I kind of feel Kenny Golladay is almost like the line of, if you're better than Kenny Golladay, you're a number 1 receiver. If you're worse than Kenny Golladay, you're not a number 1 receiver. So they got that guy. That's good. And you have Sterling Shepard as well, Darius Slayton. and even John Ross, who, hey, maybe there's some value there, at least as a burner, if nothing else. You have Evan Ingram, who I know he drops a lot. I still think he's a fine receiving tight end. You also added Kyle Rudolph. So there's a lot of options here. The question is, what are the high-end options, and how much do you expect of Kadarius Toney as a rookie? I thought I was going to have this as tier 2. I ended up having it as tier 3, but it was only by a couple of spots. There's options here, and I do like this receiving group.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair because there are, at least 5 options. I think Rudolph can be a nice red zone guy. Ingram's, I still think, a pretty good tight end too, like you said. I think Galladay's a little overrated. He was talked about getting paid as a tier 1 wide receiver, and I just don't think he's that guy. I think he's a good enough receiver though, like you said. And then I like Slayton and Shepard too in their roles. So I think that this is a pretty good group overall. But yeah, like you said, there's no person on this team that really gets me excited besides potentially Toney turning into the next Tyreek Hill, which is a possibility. He was electric in college, and he has a lot of those same characteristics, but we just need to see it first because obviously Tyreek Hill is a one of one, and we're not sure if we need to see Toney be that kind of guy.
Yeah, and I could see Toney having a bit of a learning curve. I do feel like there's going to be a bit of, oh, you mean I can't just run by everybody like I could in college? Okay, they've got to learn a little bit here. But yeah, I mean, again, the 2 teams that I had ahead of them in wide receivers were Washington and San Francisco. And again, like San Francisco has George Kittle, who is, that counts as like a true number 1 guy. Washington has McLaurin, who's like a true number 1 guy. The Giants they might not. We'll see. But there's a lot of stuff to like here if there isn't anything to necessarily love. The offensive line is not something to love. This is the mess. This is not good. Second worst offensive line in football, I have it as. You have Nate Soldier, who did not play last year. Maybe you hope that there's something there. Probably not. But if not, obviously Andrew Thomas, that's a big hope that he can take a step forward. I thought he showed some flashes. I'm not out on Thomas, but it was not what he lived up. He was supposed to be an obvious pick. Like he was like Penei Sewell almost, not quite that, but similar to that. And he has not lived up to the hype. And the other tackle was maybe Matt Pert, who was a 3rd rounder in 2020 and, only played 150 snaps. For guards, you have Shane Lemieux, Zach Fulton, Will Hernandez. So not sure if any of these guys are like a top, I don't know, 32 guard, or maybe Fulton and Hernandez can be like fine weak spots, but they're kind of their strengths at this point. Nick Gates as a center. This is not a good offensive line. There might not be a ton of like awful spots, but there's nothing that I'm like, oh, well, at least they have that.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, this is the definition of a tier 5. I think, I think the thing that's just so amazing is they tried this is not like a team that's like really been like just neglected the offensive line. Like I think, like if you talk about the Seahawks, I don't think they're a bad offensive line, but they definitely haven't put a lot of effort into making a good offensive line. I think the Giants have put effort into making this a good offensive line, and it just seems like every move they make just hasn't worked out. They try the Nate Soldier thing. Nate Soldier takes a step back when he gets the contract. I still think he's a fine player, just not, what he was. And then you look at, we said last year going into that draft, it was a 4-tackle draft. And of the teams in the top, we were like, the Giants need to tackle more than anybody else. And they just happened to get the one that didn't work out. We saw a lot of flashes of promise out of Wills, Becton, and who's the other? Worse. Thank you. Sorry. He was the best of the 4. So yeah, you saw a lot of promise out of those 3 guys, and they got the one that just didn't seem like he had things working last season. Hopefully he gets better so that it wasn't a waste of a draft pick, but I still think he's got a long way to go.
Yeah, and that's really where the hang up is. So offense ends up being 26th according to my rankings. But again, there is some room for improvement. The wide receiving core does a little bit better, and the halfback room does better than I'm expecting. All of a sudden, this might turn from the 26th to like a top 15 offense, which would be a huge jump.
Yeah, I mean it could, but I still feel like it comes down to, can Daniel Jones be that guy that do you see Daniel Jones leading a top 15 offense in football? I'm still leaning on no.
I could see him leading a top 15. I think that, again, if the wide receiving room does work out, and if he does have a great, if it's built around, like, for example, if he played for Tennessee, could I see them going top 15? Yeah, they would be top 15, I think.
I'm scared by the turnovers. I don't want my quarterback dropping the ball at the 30-yard line and giving the team a short field. I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe he gets a little bit better, but I'm still just not really seeing it right now with him.
Okay, well, agree to disagree. You are not going to be joining the Daniel Jones fan club anytime soon, I guess, is what we can say.
No, I mean, I'm willing to bet that there's a new quarterback in New York for this team next season.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, listen, there was a chance it would have happened going into 2021, so it's not crazy. Let's go to the defense. This is where things get better. Specifically, coverage. You have James Bradberry, someone who I'm a big fan of, especially in that system. They added Adoree Jackson, someone I believe you're a big fan of, or at least somewhat of a fan of. And for safeties, you got Jabril Peppers, Logan Ryan, Xavier McKinney, who was a second rounder in 2020, but only had 211 snaps last year. So hopefully we'll see more of him and see how that goes. Linebackers, Blake Martinez, who, got sort of ran out of Green Bay, but it's been good for the Giants. And then you have Reggie Ragland, who, good run defender, rough in coverage. But as a whole, a lot of it is not necessarily even the talent, but just how well these guys know their role. We talk about Dallas and how no one seems to know what they're supposed to do. This team knows their role. They know where to go. They know when to switch, things like that. This is a tier 2 coverage unit I have them as.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I like 5 of these guys in this coverage unit. I like Bradberry. I like Peppers. And, I do like Jackson, like you said. But, I mean, the situation was late last year. I hope to just see him on the field. We'll see what happens with that. Maybe. I don't know. It was a little weird. So we'll just leave it at that. But hopefully he's on the field this season and it looks better. But yeah, I mean, that's a huge upgrade for them too. If Jackson looks like 2019 Adoree Jackson, I mean, this could easily jump into a tier 1 conversation as far as coverage unit. It just depends on, what we get out of him and what we get out of some of these guys.
Yep, exactly. I completely agree. And, Peppers, maybe not the best safety in the league, but one of the more exciting safeties to watch. That kind of style is always very fun.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's been that guy since college, basically, and he's brought it to the NFL and, also a good punt returner. So they'll have that with him too.
Yeah, there you go. I do not have punt return factored into this list, but if I did, that would be a big benefit. Run defense, there's, for the interior, you have Leonard Williams, who will play both, but I have him listed as interior. Dexter Lawrence, who he was, we talk about Peppers. Peppers was a part of the Odell trade. Lawrence was a pick they got from the Odell trade. He's been very good for them. You also have, Austin Johnson, who's kind of a depth guy. For edge, you have Azeez Ojulari, who they drafted in the second round. Some people thought should have been a first round selection. They also added Afidi Ndagabo, who is a good player. He can do a lot. The edge isn't spectacular, but they have a good interior, so the edge will be able to figure stuff out. I had this as it's a tier 3, both run defense and pass rush, which is fine because their coverage is good. So this ends up being the 9th best defense in football for me.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, the highlight of this group, especially outside of the secondary, is that Williams and Lawrence combination that can both rush the passer and also stop the run, like you were saying. I do think this team will miss Dalvin Tomlinson a little bit, but at the same time, he served a specific role as kind of that pass. There was a lot of pass rush in that interior. And without Tomlinson, does that affect things a little bit? I still think it's going to be a good group overall. But yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I'm looking at. And then can Ojulari kind of be that first guy on the edge and make some plays for this team? That's a big question for them.
Yeah. So with Graham Gano, at this point in his career, he's a tier 3 kicker. As a whole, this brings the Giants to 7.28 wins. That's 22nd in the NFL. It's about a win behind the Dallas Cowboys, a little bit over, but 1.2 wins over the Dallas Cowboys, which is, I think this goes to show the strength, how much I put on offense compared to how, to me, offense and defense aren't equally important. Offense matters more, and I want to see a step up from the offense. I do think they are a team that can exceed their rating if, really, I think the biggest way this team makes the playoffs, I would think, is just if Saquon Barkley ends up being Saquon Barkley next year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair because if he can elevate this offense, it's a big thing, but he's got to be able to stay healthy and the offensive line has to be able to block for him. I think he can still be a really good running back, without a great offensive line, but that just adds to it.
I was about to say, do they have to block for him? I mean, he's good enough. They don't necessarily have to.
Well, I mean, that's fair, but at the same time, you'd like to see
help.
it. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes overall, but yeah, I mean, He's the big question mark with this team and really could elevate this team overall. And I mean, that's kind of why I had them over the Cowboys because, if we're looking at guys to bounce back from this season, I'm trusting Saquon Barkley bounces back over Ezekiel Elliott at this point in his
Sure.
career.
Yeah.
So that's reason. That's the biggest reason, even with the quarterback discrepancy. That's the biggest reason I have the Giants over them. Is I just trust a lot of these guys having like a guy like Barkley bouncing back, this defense playing an elite level, and I just trust that more than the Cowboys and some of their guys being able to turn things around.
Well, what's almost frustrating is if they like, let's say if they sign Ryan Fitzpatrick, because the thing is, if Barkley can get teams in zone, and then you have all these great receivers who can take advantage of that with like a cover 3 zone, for example, they can have guys go deep, get open. It's like, well, is Daniel Jones going to actually take advantage of that, or is Daniel Jones just going to fall on his face, and now teams can go all out to stop Saquon Barkley and all this great work you did getting a good receiving core, you completely wasted it.
Yeah. And, we just saw a quarterback, a guy like Josh Allen with insane physical gifts be able to take the leap. But that's still not something I'm going to bet on all the time happening. Maybe it gets a little bit better, and it's just going to be a tough situation. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that team overall. But yeah, I had them above the Cowboys, but I could see the scenario where Jones continues to look bad. Maybe, the injury hurt Barkley a little bit more, and this team's just struggling to move the ball, and that's what really kills them.
Yes. The nice thing, though, is the other guy that could have taken other than Daniel Jones was Dwayne Haskins. So they're okay there.
Yeah, I think everyone's just about good on Dwayne Haskins right now.
Yeah. We'll see. I don't even think we brought him up when we talked about the Steelers, but nevertheless,